Hey y'all, it's been a while. Who wants another Pathfinder video? Okay, cool. So, it's probably pretty obvious that Pathfinder 2 currently is probably my favorite system that I've played. It does a lot of things that I really like, though that said I'm not blind to any of its faults. So, here are my top 3 things that I like most and least about Pathfinder 2. So, the first thing that should come as no surprise to anyone, one of my favorite things about Pathfinder 2 is its action system. I've tried quite a few systems out there, and I've seen merits to each of their action system designs. However, I feel like Pathfinder 2's 3-action system is probably the cleanest to use. One thing that's kind of been frustrating for me in a lot of other systems is how many conditional effects that happen and get added onto other actions. You don't really see that in Pathfinder 2. From a design standpoint, the 3-action system just allows you to avoid complications like that. If you have something where a lot of things are happening for like 2 actions or something, you can make a unique 2-action action for that. As a player, it makes this kind of thing way easier to track. I don't know how many of you have tried Pathfinder 1, but there's a lot of feat trees in there where you basically can get a ton of free attacks off, but they're all conditional and based on these other things, so it's like very, very weighty and very cumbersome to use. The lack of specific action types also makes this so much simpler as well. You don't have to worry about what counts as a bonus action or a swift action or stuff like that. And what's more, there's actually uses for your skills and stuff in combat that are actually actively called out in the game. While the GM and the players can of course improvise things using their skills, there's actually explicit uses for a lot of them as well. That all said, there is a drawback of the 3-action system, and that comes in the form of action taxes. This is kind of just a consequence of having a 3-action system, is that more things have to be codified with explicit action costs, so a lot of things that you might take for granted wind up becoming a little bit more taxing in Pathfinder 2. And you have to play around it. While your actions overall are cheaper, you still now have to spend actions to move, or an action to draw a weapon, or actions to draw a shield, or certain spells and stuff take 2 actions rather than 1. And these are actually important decisions inside the system itself, but you do have to be aware of them and play around them, and they can be kind of frustrating if you're caught off guard by them. I don't think it's totally fair to make a one-to-one comparison of Pathfinder 2 to other systems, because they are inherently different systems. But I also think that it's worth noting that oftentimes with these comparisons, people will wind up comparing Pathfinder 2 rules as written to another system that they've already implemented house rules in. There's nothing stopping you from also making house rules for Pathfinder 2 as well. It's a very common thing for people to basically allow people to combine a interact to draw a weapon with a move action, and make that a house rule that people can take. But rules as written, I will admit that the action system does require a little bit of finesse to work around sometimes here and there. And you do have to be mindful of these little taxes, especially if you're playing a class like Alchemist that really wants to have its hands free. But before I go any further, I want to quick talk about the sponsor today. Yes, I finally got a sponsor. First time for everything. But anyway, it's about CLOUDBREAKER Alliance, which is a TTRPG system that I've had the honor of being able to try out a bit in its playtesting. CLOUDBREAKER Alliance is developed by CJ of Don't Stop Thinking. You might have seen a few of his videos here and there on other systems, because he's done some really good tutorials on how to get started with like 5e and Call of Cthulhu. He was also a pretty big help to me when I first started getting into the hobby myself. CLOUDBREAKER Alliance, meanwhile, is a new system that wears its anime inspirations on its sleeve. CJ is also incredibly well versed on Eastern mythology and history, so he incorporates a lot of that into the setting as well. Cloud walls have separated the lands of Ulruk, Sanctum, Ilum, and Phaeland for over 2,000 years. Constantly assailed by attacks from monsters from beyond these clouds, the clouds suddenly lifted one day, revealing each nation to one another for the first time in 2,000 years. Alliances were formed, and they have banded together to fight these new threats, combining their unique technologies, skills, and magic. The combat has a sense of suspense building to it that unleashes into a climax via the Spirit Token and Danger Token systems for players and enemies alike. And the system overall is very easy to pick up and pretty quick to get started with. It's designed in a way that allows you to freely make whatever kind of character for RP purposes that you want, without it holding back your character's combat effectiveness. I've also had the opportunity to design a few pieces of equipment as a stretch goal for the Kickstarter as well. Anyway, the Kickstarter is going live August 1st, so if you are interested at all, I would encourage you to go check it out. Anyway, back to the video. Number 2 is how every single level in this game, you get to make a significant choice. Aside from character creation, where you're making a ton of choices all at once, usually you're making 1 to 2 significant choices each level that you take. It's usually going to be something in the form of a skill increase, a class feat, a general feat, an ancestry feat, etc. As a result, you can have 2 characters of the exact same class who feel completely different and play completely differently, despite the fact that they have the same core kit. It also means that every level it feels like you have something to look forward to, and not just numeric increases. In character creation especially, there are a ton of options that you basically get to choose from to craft your character. And even when it comes to equipment and in combat and stuff, there are still significant choices to make. In combat, for instance, raw DPS races are usually not going to be what wins fights. In fact, they make it so things like grappling and doing things to buff up your allies or making it easier to hit actually can pay huge dividends, especially with the way the crit system works in this game. Likewise, your equipment also has a huge reflection on your character and also has a lot of mechanical implications. You don't have a bunch of weapons that are basically just 3 different reskins of different kinds of polearms. All of them have unique traits that allow you to do different things with each one. On the flip side of this can make it very overwhelming for new players. This isn't really a drawback that a lot of people are going to face, especially if they're only players, unless they're starting a game at a higher level and they've never played before. I've had more than one situation where I was already running a campaign and somebody wanted to join in, but they had never played Pathfinder 2 before. They really wanted to join in still, so I let them. And it is very overwhelming for them to start at a level other than 1 as a result. Heck, even starting at level 1 can be a little bit overwhelming at times, for somebody who's new to TTRPGs in general. I mean, there's a ton of ancestries to choose from, over 20 classes to choose from, and then you also have a huge list of backgrounds to sort through, and then on top of this you have to worry about your heritage, as well as ancestry feats, which ones to take there, class feats if you start with one, and then also what the skill feat is associated with your background. I love having all these choices, but they do cause a lot of analysis paralysis I've seen from new players who I've brought on board. For number 3, GMs rejoice, Paizo has implemented a working encounter balance system. Pathfinder 2's balance calculator actually works, and it works all the way up to level 20. It's not like challenge rating and stuff from earlier editions and from 5e and things like that just go completely buck wild as soon as you hit level 7. That's not the case here. Because everything basically scales with level, that means that there's always an expected range where you can expect a certain level of difficulty if a character is lower or higher level than your party. And this winds up being fairly consistent across multiple levels, even all the way up to level 20. And of course, no system is perfect, and there are going to sometimes be elements that surprise you when you design an encounter, but the expectation still is that it is generally going to work. Pathfinder 2 overall basically just has what I like to call a sliding bounded accuracy, where there is basically a applicable number of ranges that your party can expect to meet. And because all of your characters' numbers, both NPCs and players alike, are going up at the same rate as a result, it kind of just makes this all work. That said, it isn't a flawless system. Because of the way the scaling works, there is a narrower range overall of applicable levels that you can actually use. The Game Mastery Guide considers creatures usable if they have a level within 4 of your party, meaning you can have a creature that is 4 levels above or below your party, and it still do something in the combat, or still allow your players to do something. The downside of this is that it does mean that there is a more limited range of applicable monsters that you can use to balance an encounter. Once you hit like level 5 or 6, that level 1 zombie that you were encountering no longer can even hit you whatsoever. Likewise, you have to use a very careful hand when pitting your party up against a boss enemy that is higher level than them, because not only will they be harder to hit, they will be significantly more likely to hit your party members. And especially early on, that often will mean a one-hit KO for your party members, and that does not feel good whatsoever. This is a little bit easier to roll with at higher levels, but early on especially you want to try and keep your encounters close to your party's level, or even a little bit below that. There are also variant rules, such as proficiency without level, which greatly expands the range of creatures that you can use, because it removes the whole scaling with level aspect of stat increases. That said, HP and damage will still scale with a character's level, as well as training levels, like expert and master and stuff like that, so you don't want to go too far outside of bounds. Final bonus round. One of my favorite things that I actually like about Pathfinder 2 is how much Paizo actually cares about this game. I mean, don't get me wrong, corporations are not your friends, but the designers at Paizo still have basically shown a lot of care and attention to the game, and they are not afraid to basically admit that, hey, this was written with a mistake, we should probably fix it. And then they'll release an errata, and then they'll make this available online, so people can see what the errata is and adapt that change into their game. And it can improve a lot of things. The Alchemist has gotten several revisions since its launch and stuff because it was the very first class that they made during playtesting, and it's needed a bit of work. They're also even doing a remaster of the core rulebook to further expand on this and further make improvements while also moving away from the OGL. That's actually a whole other topic and stuff. Maybe I'll do a video on that. Who knows? I don't make very many videos. But anyway, I heavily appreciate these changes overall because they fall in line with the fact that the designers actually play their own game. So they actually have opinions about it and are able to see what works from their own active playtesting. They don't just delegate it to other third parties. And what's more, all of these rules are available for free. You do not need to buy a book to play Pathfinder 2. You can access all the rules on Archives of Nethys, and this is free and legal and official. Like literally, their blogs will literally mention Archives of Nethys and say, hey, these rules will be up there. While the system is generally pretty crunchy, this act makes it so much easier to get into it, and allows you to learn the system before you fully commit to buying the books. And I think it's been a great thing for the health of the community. So yeah, those are my 3+1 things that I really like about Pathfinder 2, and a few pieces of criticism that I've also had. What are some of your favorite things and least favorite things about Pathfinder 2? Comment below. Feed the algorithm. You know, that stuff. I really need it. I don't make very many videos, so... Anyway, thank you all for staying subscribed for so long. I know that I'm kind of all over the place when it comes to theming, and I don't really take a lot of care of this YouTube channel, so it's nice. And as a reminder, be sure to check out the CLOUDBREAKER Alliance Kickstarter. It's linked over in the description if you want to help support an indie RPG and go check it out, and try out a new accessible anime-style system. Now if you'll excuse me, I'm due for an oil change.